What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right. So before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to the brother Melvin for his contribution to the channel. All right. Much respect to Melvin for contributing and showing love to the channel. Much respect to everybody that has shown love to this channel. Over the past couple of years, man. I want to thank everybody that has donated to this channel. Okay. And I try to do uh, as many videos for you guys as possible. And, what I'm saying? I hope you guys like the content. And I want to thank everybody that's also signed for the Patreon. Okay. So I want to thank all you guys for your support. Now, I want to talk about Oscar Robertson, all right? Because Oscar Robertson said something recently about Russell Westbrook. He said that he hopes that Russ breaks his record, which, barring injury, now looks to be inevitable. I think Russ is really motivated to go after that mark. He also said something about he criticized a lot of Westbrook's uh, critics, basically saying that Westbrook hasn't had the best teammates, I guess, in his career, and that a lot of it comes down to personnel, the organization, and things of that nature. Okay. Now, this is my thoughts on that. Okay. Now, I won't sit up here and say that Russ hasn't had some talented teammates. He did. Okay. Over the course of his career, he's played with a lot of guys. When you talk about Kevin Durant, when you talk about Serge Ibaka, James Harden, um, he's played with some guys. He's played with right now he's playing with Bradley Beal. Um, so he's played with some talent. However, I do want to say this, okay? So is James Harden. I'm just throwing him out there because I don't see quite the same animus toward James Harden, who you could argue has had more talent around him over the past several years than Russell Westbrook, okay? Including now being on a supposed super team with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. But he still doesn't have any championships. Kyrie and Kevin Durant, of course, do. And I also want to say this too. Over the past 10 years, if you haven't had LeBron James, Tim Duncan, Steph Curry, or Kawhi Leonard on your team, you haven't won any championships. And while Kevin Durant does have two championships, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people still don't give him the full credit for it because of the team that he went to. And now, Kevin Durant's gone to the Brooklyn Nets. And, look, has LeBron James stacked the deck in the past? Absolutely. But I don't know if LeBron's ever stacked a deck as high as what's going on in Brooklyn, as far as actual Hall of Fame superstar power around you, you know what I'm saying? Or talent around you. So while it is true that Russell Westbrook has played with talent, they've all been in various stages of their careers. Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, earlier with James Harden when he was still a six man. Serge didn't win a championship until he played with Leonard. Durant didn't win anything until he went to the Warriors, who were already a championship level squad. Paul George, who I forgot to mention, he still hasn't won a championship, and is an epic choker in his own right. You know what I'm saying? And I admit that Russell Westbrook in the ends of game, in close games toward the end can fuck up. But Paul George is an epic fuck up, as we saw last year in the playoffs. So, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Should Russell have won more? I mean, I guess, yes. But that's a lot of guys. You know what I'm saying? A lot of guys in the history of this league, they should have won more. They should have went further. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're talking about George Gervin, whether you're talking about, um, Patrick Ewing, uh, you know, Karl Malone, Barkley, some of these guys, they should have won more. I'm not putting Russ exactly on their level, but the expectations that he should be a multiple time champion seems to indicate that people expect him to be on the level of those guys, which I don't think Russ is. I don't even think Russ really is a top 50 all time player right now. Still, I think he's close, but he's not top 50. Um, Now, this is one thing I want to say about Oscar Robertson and his perspective, okay? Um, I think Oscar obviously is a fan of what you call the all around player. That was his playing style. He's going to gravitate toward players like that. He's always been vehemently against Jordan, which I don't get. Um, he's always been a fan of LeBron. He was a fan of Scotty. He likes those type of all around type triple double threat guys. Maybe that's a bit of narcissism on his part. I don't know. Um, I will say this about Oscar. Oscar is as close to the Kurt Flood of the NBA as we've had. It was Oscar Robertson that led the lawsuit against the NBA, which eventually allowed players to have more freedom as far as choosing who they want to play with. Because see, when Oscar was playing, the organizations own you. Even when your contract was up, it was up to the organization to either resign you or trade you. Players really didn't have any control when Oscar Robertson was playing. See, when Oscar was playing, he couldn't, communicate with Wilt Chamberlain and say, that's not fair what's going on in Boston, in my opinion. Hey, me and you should hook up. You know what I'm saying? Let's go, you know what I'm saying? Come join me in Cincinnati or I'll join you in Philly or, make some trade. That didn't happen back then. So Oscar had to deal with the hand that was dealt to him. And while he had some talent around him, he did play with Jerry Lucas. He played with the late Jack Twyman. You know, I think later on he played with, I believe he played with, did he play with Bob Boozer? Or am I mixing Bob Boozer up with, I can't remember. But I might be thinking about the Bucks years. But he played with some talent, but not to the extent where he had a team that could be a championship contender. And I think that's something that makes him kind of sympathetic toward that. Like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't have the luxury of going to this team or that team. And the only reason why he got out of Cincinnati was because Bob Cousy was very jealous of him. Bob Cousy became the head coach of the Cincinnati Royals, and he and Oscar didn't get along with each other. And ultimately, the Cincinnati Royals traded him to Milwaukee, which was a godsend because now you putting Oscar and teaming him with an all-time great talent in Kareem. And ultimately, they won a championship in 1971. But if it wasn't for that, perhaps Oscar would have gone throughout his career without winning a championship. So I think that's why a lot of these older guys, they kind of look down on some of these guys who are moving pieces around like chess. Or they, if not looking down on them, they're holding it against them because in their eras they didn't have that freedom. They didn't have that freedom to pick and choose who you could go to, especially before early 1970s. Those guys were locked in. If you didn't, if you weren't drafted by Boston for the most part, unless you lucked up and got traded somehow, you were stuck. But over the years, slowly throughout the 1970s and since then, players have gained and garnered more power. Now it's truly a players' league, and these guys can pretty much, you know, do as they want. And some players, to me, they're obviously breaking tampering rules. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me trying to explain things from Oscar's perspective. Now, as far as Russell Westbrook is concerned, um, do I think that, you know, he's the best? I already did a video about that. I don't think he's the greatest point guard ever or the second greatest point guard. Um, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of guys that I would put ahead of him. Magic, I put Oscar, I put Isaiah ahead of him. I'd put Steph Curry ahead of him. I'd put Gary Payton ahead of him, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, uh, Walt Clyde Frazier, Chris Paul, Nate Archibald. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of guys I put ahead of him. Lenny Wilkins. People don't quite understand how many great all-time point guards there are. Technically, I have to put Bob Cousy ahead of him. You know what I'm saying? If you're looking at resume, but Russell is a great player, and even if he's not a top 50 all-time player, you know, he's still amongst the best players. He's definitely top, 70, 75, in my opinion. I think that's reasonable. And at the end of the day, he will go down as a historically great player. I kind of almost want to equate him to somebody like Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan was the strikeout king, okay? But nobody would really say he was the greatest pitcher of all time. You know what I'm saying? Nolan Ryan would strike out, 15 batters, but in the same game, he might throw 4 wild pitches and walk 5 guys. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so that's my thing with Russ. Russ is a tremendous point guard. He's one of the most athletic players we've ever seen. He's putting up historic numbers. But do I think that he's on the level of some other greats? No. But I do like him. I like him because his play reminds me of how basketball used to be. Not so much emphasis on three ball. His game is still more predicated on speed, explosiveness, athleticism. He's still a danger in transition. He reminds me of how guys used to play in the late '90s and into the 2000s. So his game is a throwback, and that's one of the reasons why I like him. And at the end of the day, this will be the third year he's led the NBA in passing. Um, Even though he has his reputation for being the turnover king, in reality, James Harden turns the ball over more than anybody else. James Harden has had more seasons leading the NBA in turnover than anybody else, and that was 6. And as a matter of fact, James Harden has the record for most turnovers in a season with 464. And I believe if James Harden hadn't missed so many games this year, he probably would have led the NBA in turnovers for a 7th year. So that's my thing. People get on Russell Westbrook for being a turnover machine, but that's how I know that people are influenced by narratives because James Harden has led the NBA in turnovers 4 times. I mean, excuse me, 6 times. Russ 4 times. It's still too many, but like I said before, a lot of people don't give James Harden that same type of, uh, you know, expectation. The biggest culprit of this is Stephen A. Smith. But see, Stephen A. Smith, as long as you give him access, then he'll look the other way with a lot of shit that's your fault. But it is what it is. That's a whole nother thing. And I already did a video talking about how the media is problematic in a lot of these different things. But tell me what you guys think.